This morning we have been talking about some very interesting thing, and I'll be touching upon the outlook of GM corn and soya. I said GM word. And believe me, I've been in Europe and US for past 20 days and I've eaten a lot of GM corn. So if you see me turning to green, there is an exit just behind you. Please run for it. But I'm pretty sure nothing is going to happen. And that is where actually we have to understand when we talk about genetic modification, we are not talking about something which is monster. And I'll be taking you through that, why it is important. As a nation, actually, we have been talking about getting into 2047 with 30, 20, 25, different people give different number, $1 trillion of GDP. But we are so scared of one seed. Somebody sends a WhatsApp message and say that GM will lead to calves with 3 heads. And we say, wow, GM is bad. Our discourse is all rhetoric. We are ready to send the rovers to Mars and Moon, but we are not able to decide, is GM good or bad? Why so debate? We have to conclude. Is it bad? Let's not talk about it. It is good, which I strongly believe. And believe me, one more side effect of GM corn, which I was been eating, is that I am a person with a very, very strong opinion. And also, luckily, a mic to share that opinion. That is what GM is all about. So let's understand, first of all, Sir has talked about these numbers. A Viksit Bharat, do you think that these numbers make any sense? We are having the highest among kids below 5 who are stunted, wasted. See these numbers tells us the story that we are stomach full but nutrient deficient. We talked about India is having one of the lowest protein consumption within our peers also. Our kids are having malnutrition which is worse than sub-Saharan Africa. Do we want to enter 2047 with great smart cities, big industry, but the next generation which is struggling to have a good, healthy life? The problem statement is simple. Are we gonna be living for our next generation, doing something for them? Or we just restrict ourselves with that? I'm an economist, I love numbers, those trillions and billions. We talked about $700 billion of agriculture export. Now somebody actually in London told me the costliest shoes are shoes which are having beautiful lead metal like in the sole. I would love to wear it, but definitely when I am in a sprint race. What we are doing is that we are having those lead-worn shoes and trying to run a sprint race, competing with Brazil, US, Europe, while they are using a technology which is 25-year-old. They are having a shield, we don't. And this is what I would say, those who are sitting in this room should think about when we are moving forward, do this slide be there in 2047 or not? I'm not going to be repeating numbers because I think they are already on the slide. The interesting aspect of this slide is that actually when we talk about the need for feed, you cannot take care of a bird if you don't take care of feed. Feed is a 70% of your cost. Now, if the 70% of the cost, if we keep on increasing that continuously as we move forward, will it help? Now, for my understanding, I would like to understand how many of you understand what GM is all about? How many of you know GM? Can you raise your hands? Okay. So we are talking about hardly 15% people who understand what GM is. So let me go beyond my slide and explain what GM is. All of you know machines. Machines have a manual. How to run, how they will run. Similarly, all the living organisms, whether the plant, the animals, the microbes, they also have an instruction book which is known as DNA. That instruction book tells you how you will live. Suddenly, if you want a trait of that book need to be changed, this is where the GM comes. So that DNA, just like a book you open, you either remove a line of it, you add a line of it, or you copy a line from some other organism and put it in that book. That is what is GMO, genetically modified organism. So I'll give you an example. For example, you know that a corn which gets infested by a specific type of insect every year, what to do? So you find another organism which will ensure that it kills that insect and use that part of its DNA, the gene, and put it in the corn. So the next time when you are having corn, it will itself be resistant or tolerant to that specific insect. Similarly, we also have herbicide-tolerant GMO products which ensure that you are able to manage your farms better because most of the nutrient would be taken care of by the main plant, but not the weed, when you apply the herbicides. Now, when we talk about the poultry industry, right, it's a heavyweight. We are talking about a $25 billion industry. It has been growing pretty well, but there was a bump. We'll understand actually why there was a bump. So if you see in 2019, suddenly the protein consumption in India started decreasing. And how many of you know what is the reason behind that? Did we Indians stop loving our butter chicken or anda pav in 2019 suddenly? Okay, that no, fine, we don't want to have more protein, we are okay with whatever we had so far. Now there is the legacy behind that. The bump was because, right, we started seeing that the production of egg, meat, all slowing down. And the slowing down was because of, most of you would be recalling 2019 onwards, what were the price of corn and soya meal and why they started moving up. And this is what actually, if you see that, if this is the breakout of overall, the spikes. So the 10% increase in maize price and 14% increase in soybean meal price happened in 2019. Suddenly, the eggs and the meat became costly. Suddenly, even the milk started becoming costly because, as I said, 70% of the cost is feed. The affordability reduced. And we are seeing those challenges. What happened in 2019 is still impacting, and the industry is just recovering out of that. That was one lesson. In fact, many of you would recall that soya meal price touched 110 or odd, right, during 2020-21. And then we had shun away all our apprehension and say that we'll import GM-based soya meal from outside because otherwise you won't survive. Now, when things are normal, we Indians, we love that concept, that eventually everything will get sorted out on its own. A problem, if you don't give solution, will not remain a problem after some time. But that problem keeps on coming back because this chart tells you that where we are. And here we are on the left, the first chart, we are just talking about the global averages, which includes some of the countries which are least developed countries and some of the countries which are well-developed countries. Our productivity, when we talk about rice, wheat, corn, cotton, soybean, right, from 40% to 60%, we are lower than the global averages. We are talking about a Krishi Pradhan Desh, but this is what we are giving our farmers, the lowest possible productivity. As we move forward, by 2047, we all know that the climate change will have more impact. 3 to 4% of productivity is going to go down just because of climate change. We don't have more of land. High demand, low productivity, and reduction of resources. Equal to what? Anybody? One word for this? Disaster. We are walking into disaster. We talk about production, we don't talk about productivity. Until unless we take care of productivity, we are going to be having an issue in our life. So now when we see, so when you see the price comparison also, soybean FOB prices, why Indian poultry industry should be paying $125 more than our peers. If we keep on doing that, I don't think actually we will be profitable as a poultry industry, and if we won't be profitable, we won't be making protein affordable to our people. If we don't make protein affordable to our people, we go back, stunting and wasting. And 3% wiped out from our GDP just because our people are undernourished. Now, when we talk about another option, a lot of people will say that, fine, let's not get into GMOs, sure, we just import. Now, the million-dollar question is that actually, when we talk about the low productivity, the option is only import. India would be requiring close to 43 million metric tons of soybean by 2047. We produce hardly 10 million of it now. India would need close to 103 million metric tons, and this is what Niti Aayog tells, it's not my numbers, 103 million metric tons of corn, while today we scrape through just 40 million metric tons this year. Again, without resources, again, without increased productivity, right? Is it possible to achieve that? It is not possible to achieve that. Now, there is a myth, actually, we always say that, the world is also debating on GMO. No, sir, we are debating far more than the world. These are the numbers which tells you, today, most of the countries, they started growing HTs, again, it's a GMO product, so it's herb tolerant, and BT. So cotton, soybean, corn, you'll find majority of the cultivation is GM based. More than 80% of all these crops are GM based. And I'm yet to see in these countries monsters coming out, right? Their people are very civilized, they talk well, right? And same, even their, I would say the poultry industry is doing far better than ours for a very simple reason is that actually they are having access to low cost feed. WHO itself says that actually most of the GMO product on shelf, they have gone through the regulations. And I'll talk about some of those regulations, right? So all these agencies from US to China to Europe, right? We say that actually GM, sufficient research has not happened. Sufficient research might not have happened in India. But globally for past 25 years, the technology is being questioned day in, day out. There are more than 900 odd reports right, which very categorically says, right, that GMO food is safe, right? Even in India, we have gone a step further. There is a technology called CRISPR-Cas, genetic editing, SDN1 and SDN2. We have allowed that. So we are allowing GM from the back door, but we don't want it to allow it in the front door and have very clear scientific evidence-based discourse and decide whether it's a good or bad. Now with that, I would leave it for the audience to think that do we want in future a country which is self-sufficient in feeding its own population the protein, or do we want to import chicken legs from US, or if we are better off, soya meal from US, or do we want our farmers to take the benefit of genetically modified crops, specifically in soybean, specifically in corn, and with the new policy of the government on also dovetailing the fuel part of it, with maize being diverted to ethanol, I am not very sure which car would differentiate between ethanol made from GM corn or ethanol made from non-GM corn. Thank you.